Hello, viewers, and welcome to my channel, Jackson's Journal. My name is Matthew Jackson, and today's date is, as I'm recording this video, of course, is June 27th, 2022. And so it's 3 days after the Dobbs versus Jackson case was ruled on. It was ruled on Friday, or the ruling came out on Friday, June 24th, 2022, and this overturned Roe versus Wade, the 1973 Supreme Court decision. It also it overturned the Planned Parenthood versus Casey ruling as well that came out in 1992. So this is a huge victory for the pro-life movement. Very big. It's probably one of the most profound, impactful Supreme Court decisions in my lifetime, if you want to include Roe v. Wade in there, because that was impactful too in a negative way. But today, now we're in a post-Roe era. This is huge. And now the abortion issue is going to be decided state by state, that's how it should be to begin with. It never should have become a national or federal issue. And of course, the pro-aborts are up and mad. They are beside themselves and they are squealing like a bunch of stuck pigs. And I am loving every minute of it. Anyway, so suffice it to say, a lot of the social media traffic has increased, a lot of discussions on abortion. Roe versus Wade, the whole issue has been discussed in social media. And of course, I can't resist getting involved. And I've been involved in several discussions. And I've been talking with one lady in particular. Her name is Brenda. And she bombarded me with a plethora of questions, actually 6 questions to be exact. And before I started to, I asked her immediately when she asked those questions. I asked her, well, do you really want me to seriously and sincerely answer your questions, or are you just asking me these questions rhetorically? Because sometimes when you get asked questions by your debate opponents, they're not really being honest and they don't really want you to give them an honest answer. And I said, I'd be happy to give you an honest answer if you really want one. And she said, sure, I want one. And I said, okay, well, give me some time and I'll answer your questions. And so she asked some pretty good questions, actually, and some very common questions. Actually, when I say pretty good, well, that remains to be seen, but they're typical questions that you would hear from a pro-abortion person. So instead of answering her questions in text form, I figured I'll do a video on it. And this will be a good instructional video for you pro-lifers how to handle pro-abortion people when they ask you their questions. So I'm just going to make a training video out of it. That's the way I look at it. So, but before I do that, before I answer Brenda's 6 questions, please subscribe to my channel, Jackson's Journal. Okay, like, comment, share on the videos, watch my videos. Also, I have another YouTube channel called CCM Drummer. If you are interested in CCM music, that's the channel to subscribe to. Or if you don't know much about CCM and you want to know more about it, well, that's also a good reason to subscribe to my channel, CCM Drummer. So yeah, when you subscribe, obviously click the notification bell to the right so you'll be notified when I upload a video. So let me go ahead and get started on Brenda's questions. Now, generally, I like to keep my videos around 15 minutes long. However, I don't think it's going to be possible in this video because there's going to be a lot of explanations and stuff. So I'll try to keep it under 30 minutes. So Brenda, her first question, which really isn't much of a question, it's more of a statement that has a rhetorical question tagged at the end. But let me go ahead and read it to you. Every time you masturbate or have sex for any reason other than procreating, you are murdering babies. Okay, so this is the mentality of the person I'm dealing with here. I'm murdering babies when you waste a sperm. Okay, now we're humanizing sperm. All right, you should be handcuffed and arrested. You should be forced to have your sheets inspected every week for evidence of you doing so. And if we find any evidence of sperm, to jail, you go for murder. Got that? So that's the question. Got that? Okay. So this is a very common tactic among the pro-abort. They'll say, well, what about a discharged egg when the woman has her period? Or what about, when a man masturbates and the sperm gets wasted or whatever. So we're dehumanizing, or actually we're humanizing. It's funny, pro-aborts. When the sperm beats the egg is fertilized by a sperm, it becomes a human being. Life begins at conception. But in their minds, it's not a life, it's a parasite, and they do everything they can do to dehumanize that fertilized egg, that zygote, that blastocyst, that embryo and fetus. Okay. They're going to dehumanize that as much as possible to justify abortion. But then on the same token, they want to say you're murdering if you waste a sperm. Does that make sense to you? Now, interestingly enough, this lady told me that she was married to an OBGYN for 25 years, and that she worked in a hospital. In fact, she said she worked in hospitals, more than one hospital. So she did not, I asked her, well, what capacity? Was she a technician? Was she a nurse? Maybe an administrator or something? What did she do in the hospital? She never would answer that question. But the fact that she was married to a doctor, I would assume she was, in the higher part of the food chain. Doctors typically don't marry maintenance and janitorial staff in a hospital. They usually marry people who are some that are working in the medical profession in some capacity. So I would imagine she was a nurse or a technician, but I don't know. But anyway, for someone who's been married to an OBGYN for, a doctor for 25 years, to make a statement like that shows a lot of ignorance. And so my best response to that first question is you follow the science. And I know liberals love to say follow the science when they talk about man-made climate change. But obviously, when they're talking about embryology and fetology and the development of an unborn child, they tend to ignore the science. So yeah, science says when the sperm meet the egg, fertilized egg, zygote, moment of conception, that's a human being. The sperm or the egg before that is not a human being. So a loss of that is not murder. So murder is a legal term anyway for killing a born person. Okay, next question. Question number 2. So how many of these born babies are you going to adopt and raise for the next 18 years? Now, believe me, most pro-aborts could care less about adoption. If a woman gets pregnant, doesn't want to have the baby, to them, in their minds, abortion is the first option. Okay, adoption is way the bottom of the list, so they could care less about adoption. But the reason many pro-aborts will ask you, are you going to adopt these babies? Or they'll ask, I've also been asked, how many children have you adopted? Okay, so this is a common pro-abort tactic. What they're trying to do is they're trying to attack your credibility as a pro-lifer. Their twisted logic is, well, you can't be really against abortion if you've never adopted or not willing to adopt. In other words, they're trying to find a chink in your armor. Well, that's a false construct. That's false logic. That would be like saying to an abolitionist back in the mid-1800s, well, you can't be against slavery. I mean, how many slaves have you adopted? Have you adopted any slaves? Are you willing to adopt some slaves that are freed? Tell an abolitionist that. Slavery was wrong, regardless of whether someone wanted to adopt a slave or not. Abortion is wrong. The killing, if I see someone trying to kill a born child, I intervene, it would be ridiculous to ask me, well, wait a minute, are you going to adopt that child? No, it's wrong. Killing is wrong. Murder is wrong, whether you intend to adopt or not. All right. That would be like a Christian in Nazi Germany being against the Holocaust. All right. But then they can't be against the Holocaust because they haven't adopted any Jews. You see how twisted that is? Now, having said all that, crisis pregnancy centers do provide assistance in adoption because adoption is a constructive alternative to abortion, especially if the mother is single and young and is not established. There are many, many married couples who are established that are willing to adopt and want, they can't have children on their own and want to adopt. Okay, so crisis pregnancy centers have contacts with adoption agencies. They also have contacts with lawyers who are willing to work pro bono to help the mother put their baby up for adoption. So pro-life people and pro-life organizations, crisis pregnancy centers in particular, have played a big role and do play a big role in helping set that whole process up. And I have donated money to crisis pregnancy centers to help facilitate that. Okay. I have made it all when I was much younger, when I was protesting at the abortion mills. If I were to talk to a pre-abortive mother, I have made the offer. Me and my wife have. Yeah, it's been done before. They never took me up on it. They would rather kill the child than to do that. But yeah, it's been done. And that raises a question. I'd like to ask Brenda a question. If a mother makes an appointment for an abortion, is headed to the abortion mill, but then changes her mind and decides to give up her baby for adoption, would you be okay with that, Brenda? Would that be okay with you if she did that? Think about that. Okay, next question, and it's an extension of the last question. Surely you will vote to give the ones you raise assistance with you paying taxes for that, right? Okay, so she's invoking the welfare system, that we use both at the federal and state level. Um, I would vote for assistance at the private level. Um, the government, state and federal, do a very poor job of administrating welfare. I am for welfare, okay? I'm just not too crazy about government run welfare because it's very inefficient and they reward bad behavior. They don't hold their recipients accountable. So 30 cents out of every welfare dollar, for every dollar that goes to welfare in the government run systems, only 30% of that gets to the actual recipient whom they are intended to help. The other 70% is used to pay the bureaucrats. So privately run health welfare systems, the churches and nonprofit organizations, they do a much more efficient job of helping the poor and disadvantaged. So yeah, I'm all for helping them, but I'll just donate my money. And again, it's my money I donate. I'm not taking, at the federal, the government level, the government takes money out of someone else's pocket and puts it in somebody else's pocket. Okay. Here, I'd rather do it on my own volition. Okay. And I'll bet my house against Brenda's car that I've given a greater percentage of my income to charity than she has. Okay. Question number 4. How about all the girls who are raped, trafficked, and sexually abused? Are you going to provide for them as well, right? Including providing mental health care for trauma of making them carry and give birth to their abuser's child? So that's really 3 questions in one. I've like kind of put them all together because it does the same topic. Okay, yes. Let me answer that question. Let me address, and that's a good issue to talk about because um, where I grew up in Houston, Houston is a major hub for sex trafficking, and now rape, a pregnancy resulting in rape is rare, but it does happen. In incest, it does happen, and of course, sexual trafficking, it does happen. Yeah. Now, let me ask Brenda a question. There's a lot of abortion mills that will handle that will do abortions on underage teenagers, underage. In most cases, those underage teenagers got pregnant by an older man. By law, if a woman is raped, even an adult woman, a criminal rape, or an underage is in a statutory rape, they are by law in most states required to report that. I've heard many stories about Planned Parenthood, especially, that do not report these cases to the authorities. They just do the abortion to cover up the crime. So rapists, in particular, are very pro-abortion. They would love nothing better than their baby to be aborted because it gets rid of the evidence that they were a rapist and they get off scot-free. Going to provide for you're going to provide for them as well, right? Again, same as before. We donate to causes that help underprivileged, disadvantaged, at-risk children. So yeah, we've done that and are doing that. I'm working with my wife here in Brazil as missionaries, and we're targeting disadvantaged, at-risk youth. So yeah, we're doing what we preach, including providing mental health care for them for trauma, making them carry. Well, listen, um, whether a rape victim uh, conceives a child and gives birth to the child or not, that rape victim is going to need mental health assistance anyway. They're going to need counseling and therapy for that anyway. So we know of a case right now where a 9-year-old girl, actually it happened over a 2-year period. 9-year-old girl was molested by an older man. She never got pregnant, but it happened over a 2-year period, and she recently tried to commit suicide. And she needs help, and so we're familiar with that. Also, we visited a home a month ago that had a 12-year-old that just gave birth, and we saw the baby. It was 1 week old, and she gave birth to a. Now this was a statutory rape case. I don't think this was an aggravated rape case. So she voluntarily consented, but she was 12. So how consensual can it be when an adult man has sex with a 12-year-old girl? But at any rate, so we're familiar with these kinds of cases. But I don't believe that murdering the child for the crime that the father did is the right thing, because the child conceived in rape or incest or whatever injustice there is, that child is still a human being just like we are and are afforded those same rights. Now they're talking about forcing a woman to carry that child to birth. Yeah, but let me tell you what, getting an abortion isn't going to undo the rape, and it's not going to undo the trauma from the rape, getting the abortion. It's only going to compound it. Now, talking about forcing, because I've heard that a lot this weekend when I've been sparring with various pro-abortion folks. They say, oh, well, they're forcing a woman to carry the baby all the way to term. Well, let me ask you this. What about those women who get pregnant and want to be a mother, and they make the choice not to have an abortion, but their coercive boyfriends or husbands or family members are pressuring them to have an abortion? I've been to the abortion mills plenty of times, and I've seen several instances where the boyfriend would be practically dragging his girlfriend by the arm into the abortion mill past the death squads that call themselves pro-choice. And it's very obvious that this woman doesn't want to have an abortion, but she's being coerced into it by her boyfriend. I was an eyewitness to a situation where a woman came out of an abortion mill to the car where her boyfriend was waiting. She decided not to have the abortion. The boyfriend got physically violent with her, so much so that the security guard had to come out and protect the mother from the boyfriend. We had a situation happen one time where the boyfriend dropped the mother off at the mill. He went off to run an errand. She came back out to us about 10 minutes later, say, hey, can you get me out of here? Can you help me? I don't want to have this abortion. I had an abortion 2 years ago, and it was the worst decision I ever made in my life. I don't want to do it again, but if I don't have the abortion, my boyfriend's going to beat me. We took her to a crisis pregnancy center. They have contact with battered women's shelters and places where she can stay to avoid the abuse. So I haven't seen any pro-aborts stand by those women who choose not to have an abortion. Where are the pro-abort saying, hey, guys, she's made her choice. She's chosen not to have an abortion. You should respect her choice. Now, we're asked to respect a woman's choice if she chooses abortion. I know the pro-aborts are really pro-choice when the woman chooses an abortion, but they're not quite as pro-choice when it comes to not choosing an abortion. So there's a little double standard there. Now, okay, next question. This is question number 5. How about the women who miscarry, have ectopic pregnancies that rupture and kill them? Okay, on an ectopic pregnancy, for those of you who don't know what ectopic pregnancy is, of course, when the fertilized egg is fertilized, when the egg's fertilized, and it starts to travel down the fallopian tube, that fertilized egg is now called a zygote. Usually what's supposed to happen, the fertilized egg's in a zygote for about 3 or 4 days, maybe 5, something like that. Comes out of the fallopian tube, it implants on the uterine wall. When it implants on the uterine wall, it becomes a blastocyst. It's no longer a zygote. Here's what an ectopic pregnancy is. Ectopic pregnancy is when the zygote doesn't get into the uterus and implant on the uterine wall, but it implants on the fallopian tube wall. Okay, then it starts to grow into a blastocyst and embryo. Well, obviously that's very problematic for both the mother and the baby. At that point in time, once that baby attaches to the fallopian tube wall, the destiny of that baby's already been determined. You can't reverse that. You can't take the baby out of the fallopian tube and implant it on the uterine wall. At least not yet. We don't have the technology. Okay, that baby is dead already. All right. So the only thing you could do is to extract the baby from the fallopian tube to save the life of a mother. There's no pro-lifer that would be against that. Okay, so that's not an abortion in the classic sense. They're not doing a surgical inducive abortion to end the life of that baby. They're doing a invasive surgical procedure to save the life of the mother because the baby is going to die anyway. Okay, so a little different. That's a rare hard case, but that does come up. Women who miscarry. Well, a miscarriage is a spontaneous abortion. The baby dies in a miscarriage. Okay, if the baby dies of natural causes for whatever reason, and that happens from time to time, uh, that's not murder. That's just death by natural causes. Okay, and the last question, and we're up at 24 minutes, almost 25. Let me see if I can knock this out. The last question, number 6. How about the women you force to carry fetuses that are not viable? Are you going to take care of them and provide for them too, right? Now, I had to ask her a follow-up question. I asked her, well, what do you mean by viable exactly? Because that's a very broad definition. And I talked to another lady in my social media debates about viability as well, and they both said, well, a non-viable could mean that the baby is dead, doesn't have brain waves or a heartbeat, or it could mean they have some abnormalities or defects where if they are born, they won't live very long, or if they do live, they won't live a normal and productive life. Okay. So really, we're talking about two things under the umbrella of viability. Well, first of all, if the baby doesn't have brain waves or heartbeat, obviously the baby's not going to live. And, and if the baby dies while, during the pregnancy, usually the baby will just miscarry out and be delivered stillborn. Rare cases, the baby may have to be extracted by C-section, but that's rare. But that's not an abortion. That's not murder because the baby's already dead. Okay, so let's get that off the table. There's no right-minded pro-lifer that would ever be against that. Okay, now let's talk about the fetus that has some supposed defects. Okay, this has happened. Now I know two women in my lifetime who were told by their OBGYNs that their baby has some defects and they recommended an abortion. Both of these women, they were Christian women, they fired their doctors, got another OBGYN, and they gave birth to their babies. Both babies were born normal with no problem. So you got to take these defects with a grain of salt from these doctors. Now, there are times when a baby does have uh, serious abnormalities that could happen that would affect their life after birth. That happens. All right. But also, let me tell you this: there are some defects in a baby that aren't discovered until after the baby's born. People get cancer, people get leukemia. A lot of defects show up after birth. Well, if those defects show up after birth, would it be okay with you, Brenda, if the mother had the right to choose to have that baby killed after the baby's born and those defects were discovered? Well, why not? What's the difference between killing a born child and an unborn child? None. So if you wouldn't, whatever you would not do to a born child, you should not be able to do to an unborn child, because there's no difference between killing an unborn child and a born child. The only difference is geography. That's the difference. So anyway, those are my answers to Brenda's questions. Now I've got a question for Brenda, because I've talked to a lot of pro-aborts over the years. I've been a pro-life activist since 1984. Okay, so I've been in a lot of debates, and I always ask my pro-abort opponents, where do you fit on the abortion scale? In other words, in terms of permissibility, uh, do you think that abortion should only be permitted in the first trimester and then be outlawed in the second and third? Or do you believe that abortion should be permitted all the way up to birth? I've met I met pro-aborts who were all over the spectrum on that. I met a pro-abort that said not only should they be able to abort just minutes before the baby's born, but even after the baby's born, they should have the right to choose infanticide. I mean, you have the extreme. So I'd like to know where Brenda is on that scale. Where do you fit in on that? Just how pro-abortion are you? Okay. Another question I have is there's a group called Jane's Revenge that just started, and they are vandalizing churches and crisis pregnancy centers with arson and vandalizing and destruction of property and using violence. Do you condemn that violence that is being perpetrated by Jane's Revenge? I know when abortionists were being shot, when clinics, when abortion mills were being bombed or set on fire, I know the pro-aborts were really up in arms about that, and they were demanding that us pro-lifers condemn this violence. Well, now that the shoe is on the other foot, Brenda, will you condemn the violence by the pro-aborts against pro-life organizations? I'd like to know about that. So, anyway, having said all that, that ends my um, session here. And my answers probably won't satisfy Brenda. They probably won't change her mind about abortion. She'll probably still be pro-abort. But anyway, this is more for the benefit of you pro-lifers who are new to the movement, and giving you some tips and suggestions on how to field these questions, because you, if you're going to engage in debates with pro-aborts, you will get pro-aborts who will talk about the humanity of sperm and whether or not we've adopted, and they'll give you the hard, extreme cases. Well, what about rape and incest and these rare medical cases that happen occasionally? And say, well, you know, but if they bring up a medical, rare, hard medical case, ask them this question. So you're against abortion for the convenience cases, but you're okay with it on the hard, rare medical cases? In most cases, they're for abortion for convenience purposes as well. And they're using the hard case, severe medical cases as a ruse. So don't let them get away with that. So thank you. God bless. And again, please feel free to like, share, subscribe. Also comment. You pro-aborts are also welcome to comment. All I ask is that you keep your comments cordial, keep them on issue. If you get ugly and start getting personal and name calling, I will delete your comment. But if you're polite and cordial, and and you disagree in a polite way, I'll permit the comment to stand. So, thank you and God bless.